Okay, good evening and welcome. This is the March 27th, 2023 meeting of the school committee. Call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. This meeting is being both audio and videotaped this evening. I would like to ask that everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. We'll have a roll call. John, please.
John Fitzpatrick, student representative.
Valento.
Elizabeth Marcin Boucher.
Angela Rochella.
Gregory Thompson.
Gordon Smith, superintendent of schools.
Pamela Blair, assistant superintendent for business.
Samantha Velasquez, secretary.
And joining us virtually this evening,
Not yet.
Sarah Trulio. Okay. Thank you.
Hang on.
That's all right, then we'll move on. We are fortunate enough, we have some of our Green Spoon recipients this evening here.
We do. We have our Pioneer Valley Excellence in Teaching Award winners for 2023. We have 4 award winners, and I'll start with our award winner who is within 0 to 3 years in her teaching career, and this is Angela Shea, who is a teacher at Mountain View School in 4th grade. You want to stand? And I'm going to read some of the things her colleagues said about her. First, we can give her a round of applause. And this comes from her colleagues because one of the things that is really neat about this process that we outline here is that the nominations come from our colleagues across the district. And in many cases, people get more than one nomination, which is really cool. And so, Angela, here's what some of your colleagues have to say about you. Okay. Angela has been employed with ELPS for the last few years, and she has adjusted to in a few positions the last few years, and she has adjusted to each new position she has held while patiently waiting for her dream placement in the 4th grade at Mountain View. Angela's expectations for her students are unwavering. She demonstrates compassion while ensuring her students meet every expectation she has. Angela is not only reaching the students in her classroom, but she has worked hard with the guidance counselor to establish the Spirit Squad for Mountain View. This group works on community service projects for both in-school and out-of-school organizations. Angela's dedication to the Mountain View community is present in her demeanor daily. She truly believes all students and staff can be the best they can be and works hard helping everyone meet their potential. So, that's pretty impressive. Staying at Mountain View, sorry, Angela. Staying at Mountain View, we have Robin Clifford, and she is one of our, Robin is a 5th grade teacher at Mountain View, and she is one of our Veteran Teacher Award winners. And here's what some of her colleagues have said about her. Robin is a highly professional member of the Mountain View family. As someone who shares students with her, she is an excellent teacher. She has very high academic, behavioral, and social emotional expectations for her students. The students under her care make huge gains in each one of those areas. During the shutdown of 2020, she went above and beyond to reach out to all of her students and their families to see how they were doing and created fun and creative home lessons and projects. She also has taken the lead in collaborating to plan out ELA for the entire 5th grade. Robin currently and always has a consistent and positive communication style with staff, students, and families at our school. All right, moving along, and we'll go to Erin Teig, who is one of our music teachers in the district, and she works, our home school is Maple Shade, but she works both at Maple Shade and Mountain View. And here's what some of her colleagues have to say about her. Erin is an amazing educator. She is an expert pedagogue that's a pretty good vocabulary word right there, who is always working not only to further her own abilities as an educator, but her team's as well. Beyond her incredible work as a music educator, Erin supports the district by serving on various committees and as department head for the elementary arts. She has worked to advocate and create safe spaces for some of our most vulnerable students by volunteering her time as a GSA advisor and furthering her professional development at the district level to support a more inclusive culture. Despite still being relatively early in her career, Erin is seen as a leader across the district. Erin Tighe. And then moving on to the high school level, we have Ms. Jan Clinny, who is one of our math teachers here at East Long Meadow High School. And here's what, we already did a round of applause. Here's what some of her colleagues have to say about Jan. And I would say before we even go, if you didn't catch last week on Western Mass News, the Surprise Patrol, her colleagues had also nominated her for the Surprise Patrol, and Western Mass News selected Jan and surprised her a few weeks back, and it aired last week, but the link is still up on their website. So take a look. It's good television. Prime time and for the entire family, good family viewing.
It was shocking.
So here's what some of her colleagues say about Jan. Jan Clinny has dedicated so much of her life to the math department at ELHS. Despite being in her last year of teaching, we're very sad that she is retiring, but I know her spirit will never leave ELHS. She puts in the most hours, often staying until 4 or 5 at night to prepare for the next day's lessons. She tutors students into all hours of the evening, working around their unique schedules. Over the course of her time, she has worked with honors and the AP population who love, respect, and come back to visit her year after year. She also works with special needs population, helping make math attainable for each of her students. She attends students' extracurricular activities and gets invited to graduation parties at the end of their high school careers. Her retirement is well-deserved, but will be a great loss to our school community.
Thank you.
I haven't done that yet. Yep. You want to do that? I was just going to shake their hands.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So because you all demonstrate the excellence of East Long Meadow as well as your peers, some of us had thought that it might be nice if you're available, if you'd like to walk in the parade with the school committee to, see some kids on the route and some of the families. So if you're interested and available, please let us know. Let Mr. Smith know. Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much for coming. Much appreciated. Congratulations. Welcome.
An invitation for the parade, because we'll do that to all winners, right? Previous winners.
Yep.
So hopefully we'll get as many people as possible who are around. But also just to let everybody know that on May 10th, the Grinspoon Foundation, in association with the Davis Foundation, will be honoring the Valley's winners for the Pioneer Excellence in Teaching Award. And it's an incredible banquet at the Log Cabin. There'll be other prizes that you'll be receiving on that evening, but I think the best part of the evening is just the recognition of what you all do and how well you do it. So one more round of applause. Thank you so much. You don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you're welcome to do that.
Okay. Nice way to start off the meeting tonight.
She's going to want to talk.
All right, we'll move forward with minutes for approval. If I could have a motion, please.
All right, I move to approve the March 13, 2023 regular session meeting minutes.
Motion made by Antonella,
I'll second.
second by Beth. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That carries 5-0. Thank you all. We have committee and subcommittee communications. Sarah, do you have anything for us today?
Not tonight. Thank you, though, Greg.
Yeah, you bet. How about John?
Sure. I know I missed the last meeting. I didn't realize the time was changed to 4 instead of 6. But
Apologize, John.
That's all right. So
We confused a few people.
Yep.
Lesson learned.
we did have Spartanum in the meantime, so that went very well. I think students were engaged. We had a lot of student viewers, I would say, in the audience, and a lot of parents and other even faculty were there. So it was nice to see everyone at Spartanum. As far as the senior class goes, we just finished up our Tour of Italy fundraiser. This is our final one out of our 4 years. We only did it 3 out of the 4, but that's okay. That went very well. We raised lots of money for the class, and that'll go towards our banquet, which is Friday, at the Delaney House, and the prom on May 12th at Great Horse. Right now, students in the high school, juniors down, and I believe also at Birchland are making their course selections. So I've heard a lot of talk about that lately. And then tomorrow is the sophomore MCAS day. So that's my update.
Great. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Amy.
I don't have anything specific from subcommittee, but I did want to share that as a parent, I attended an event, the Maple Shade volleyball game, and it was fantastic. Their fundraiser, it was so wonderful. It was so great to see the families and just the support back for the school. I think this was the first one that they've been able to do since the pandemic. So it was a really well put together and well attended fundraiser for the PTO.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Beth.
I'm good today, thank you.
Yep. No?
I attended an eLeaf meeting, and they're working on their next fundraiser, which is Celebrity Bartender Night, but they haven't really decided on.
The celebrities.
Yes. I think there were some.
Wow. I've been on the news several times. Not in handcuffs.
That's good, that's good.
That's positive.
And I also attended the high school informational night, which I thought there was a pretty good turnout, and a lot of good questions. And I think that the presentation gave out a lot of good information, so.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much for that. Okay, we have an opportunity for visitors to address the committee. If anybody's here tonight and would like to address, now would be the time. Seeing none, we will move forward. We have the middle school math grading update.
Hello, everybody.
Dr. Allen, do you want to hook into these, or do you want me to try? And what would you like to do?
I will hook in if I can hook in. I'm on the computer, so let's just make sure. CO conf,
No, CO office.
CO office.
Nice.
Okay, so thanks for having us, and we sort of want to talk about a change we'd like to make in math. Obviously, you know me, this is Jill Payance, our math coach, and Paul Levesque, our math department chair and 7th grade teacher. So I'm going to sort of lead the presentation. There's a couple slides. Jill will take over, and Paul's going to add anything that I mess up. Okay? We started with like a quick recap. So for those of you that might not have been here then, or just a million things have happened since, we wanted to give you the story. So in 2019, 2020, we actually transitioned to standards-based grading. I'm going to call that SBG the rest of the way, in our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math classes. So every class except algebra. So we came here, proposed this new way in the spring of 2019, started it that fall. Unfortunately, COVID sent us home that first year in the middle of the year, and we went right back to traditional grading. It was definitely not something we could navigate with all that was going on. Last year and this year, we went back to our standards-based grading because we did feel strongly about it. We were proud of the system we had built, and there was a lot of good in it, following the exact same procedures we put into place originally, which I'll go into a little bit. This year in January, the math department came to me and had some concerns over how this was working with families and students, and maybe with could say for, how it was working for families and students, right? So I went to the math department meeting, listened to all their concerns and their ideas, and then everything you're going to see from here on out was collaboration between me and the math department to come to a place that we all could agree and then come to you and hopefully get approval for it. But once we got this to what you're seeing now, I did present it to our school council with parents to get some feedback from them as well before coming here. So that's the recap. That's sort of the story. And here we are asking for a new way to grade. All right. So this is a little bit of flow of consciousness, this slide. All right. These are just the things we've experienced with our current standards-based grading. Okay. These are, some are positive, some are negative. They're all over the place. We definitely feel we have not had the impact in connecting parents and students to standards-based grading that we wanted to have. To do standards-based grading really well, parents and kids got to buy in to how you're doing it. And we don't feel that has happened. Okay. We do feel that the way we're grading now better matches our standardized test results than the old system did. So one thing that would happen in the old system is a majority of students sometimes would have A's and B's, and then your MCAS scores would be like, what? They don't all seem like A's and B's. And that doesn't mean they're not, but it just didn't always match up. This new one is matching up better. In classrooms, we definitely, I for sure, have seen more of a focus since we did this on standards mastery. So here is the standard. We're going to teach it. We're going to teach it a new way. We're going to assess it really quickly. We're going to look at that assessment, teach it again. That sort of zoned in on standards has improved since we went to standards-based grading. Power School is going to be much better and much more intuitive for standards-based grading. Redeker has been a nightmare for it, but I shouldn't have said that. Not like there's ways to do it. We're doing it, but it's not tailored to it. Okay. Whereas Power School is, we've learned in the trainings, it's more seamless. It's more intuitive for this type of grading than what we've
Transitioning our student information system and grade books for teachers to Power School. That'll happen. Transition's happening now. The actual implementation, full implementation will happen next year.
We are in year one of a new math curriculum, illustrative math. And we're just transitioning into that, different pace in different places. But one thing we've definitely learned is that the way illustrative math does it is it spirals. So you learn in big ideas, you learn through trial and error, you learn through exploration and discussion, and things come and go and come back. So it's spiraling, which doesn't lend itself to easy standards-based grading, where you want to be honed in on one standard, master it, then you of course come back to it, but you really hone in on these. So we're finding that it's not lining up perfectly with the way illustrative math teaches. And we like the way, by the way, that IM teaches. We've also found that not getting percentages and traditional report card grades is leading to kids not trying their best. So they get to middle school, every other subject leaves this behind and goes to, I have an 88. What do I got to do to get a 90? I have a 79. What do I got to do to get an 80? And our math, we're not getting that same response from kids. It's sort of like they almost just accept where they're at. And we want them to be inspired to go a little bit further, if that makes sense. Am I saying it right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Also, in all of this, at the middle school, we focus a lot on iReady, okay? And we've seen great results out of iReady. But one of the requirements we have in math is that every student does at least a half hour of iReady MyPath work each week and pass at least one lesson, okay? And in math and English, we have that expectation. And if they're not doing that, it impacts, in English, it directly impacts their grade. Oh, this week in iReady, I got a 50. That 50 is going to really pull this down. In standards-based grading, it doesn't impact it the same way. Kids aren't seeing it the same way. And it doesn't concretely impact the same way. So, and then the last thing is, it's definitely lonely doing this. both as a department and as a school. So when I met with the math department, I'll be honest, they were kind of like, so is English going to do this soon? Because it would help if it was happening in other places. And I looked and said, no, like COVID stalled a lot of things. And like one of it is I haven't worked with English to like get to the point where we might want to do this, and we're not just going to do it because. And then they said, well, are other schools doing this? So I texted all my middle school principal crew and said, is anybody doing this and how's it going? And nobody was doing it. And for all different reasons, like someone I really trust said, we really want to do it, but I don't have the department to do it. And, different stories like that, right? So we are the only ones. So have I left anything out or anything you want to add?
You're doing great.
So this is just sort of like what we've experienced. I'm only doing great because they did this with me, okay? Which leads us into, we did bring the following proposal to school council. I'm putting that here. And this was the feedback from them. School council's not 40 parents, it's like 4, okay? But we do value their opinion and they are thinkers. They show up, multiple times a year to give us feedback. So, they said parents don't seem to understand the math report card. So right now, some of you know, some of you don't, but like you get your report card from us and then you get a second report card, which is just math, which looks totally different. And so a lot of feedback from school council was they don't understand the math report card, which would go to like what we said, like they're not. Now, in the beginning of this, I made videos, I explained it at open house. I had a big presentation on it. Like we tried. But then, stuff also shut it down. The other feedback was parents understand percentages better than the scale. So in the elementaries, if I'm not mistaken, they do standards-based grading, but they get like letters, like progressing, emerging, something like that. We didn't do that. We wanted numbers. So our scale is not in here. But basically a 4.0 means you're doing this standard above grade level. A 3.0 means you're doing this standard at grade level. A 2.0, going to like the zone of proximal development, is like you can do this standard, but you need a little help to do it. Okay. A 1.0 is you're really just getting started in this standard. Okay. And then there are 0.5s, and on the math report card, you've seen it. It has this scale for people. But parents' feedback was clearly, we just understand percentages. We don't necessarily understand the scale that well. They said, frankly, just so you know, the feedback from teachers along the way is more valuable than the report card, which I think is always the truth. And that was good feedback from them. And they did like the system we're proposing. All right. So as we worked through this as a department, we decided there were 3 things that we felt strongly about moving forward. Okay. One is you got to keep this standards mastery focus. Although I am spirals, we want to, at the same time that we're spiraling with our curriculum, also be checking in, okay, on standards. We also feel strongly that we need to go back to percentages and a traditional letter grade at the end of the term. Okay. So we do want to go back to the old, like I got a 74 at the end of the term. My average was a 97, whatever. And the third thing is, as we keep this standards focus, we want to maintain structured and targeted standards-based formative assessments. Okay. Because doing standards-based grading requires you to do that, right? It requires you to do check-ins on standards all the time. Okay. And we don't want to lose that. So all of these 3 drove us into the following proposals. Part 1, we use our current standards-based report card schedule. So right now, as you can imagine, each grade has like whatever 8 to 12 standards. We call them skills that they're focused on throughout the year, and they know like skill 1 and 2 go from September to mid-October. Skill 3, 4, and 5 go from mid-October to Thanksgiving, and they have like that mapped out. We want to use that schedule to then use iReady in a way we use it, but we want to use it more systematically. They have mastery checks. So iReady, if you say, here's the standard in 7th grade math, iReady will give you a short assessment on that standard. And they allow you to do 2 per standard. It's not like as many as you want. They allow you to do 2 per standard. But so we want to take the schedule we have of when our standards are, and we want to lock in to a mastery check in iReady of those standards. Okay. Now, will every kid master them at exactly the right moment? Absolutely not. We're acknowledging IM spirals. Okay. But will it allow us to get a look at how kids are doing? By the way, on a test not made by us, right? Which is one of the things with MCAS. If you only give teacher-created assessments all year long, MCAS is completely out of nowhere, right? So this would be sort of like that. So this is tied to the calendar, assess the standards we are teaching in a fully objective manner. It helps us maintain our standards mastery focus. It allows us to have the formative check-ins, and it holds us to checkpoints of progress throughout the year. Okay, so the eternal conundrum in math is, when do I move on, even though not everyone has it? And when do I stay here? Because so many don't have it, but then I'm going to be behind. So everybody knows that. So this would be a way to sort of do a little bit of both and hold us to standards checks. In other words, we feel that this mastery check schedule would accomplish much of what standards-based grading's been meant to accomplish. All right. So that's part 1. These next 3 slides, Joe will explain one of them.
So this is kind of a bird's eye view of what a grade 6 would look like with pacing. So you can see at the very top, we've got the months and how many days, academic days, are in each month. You'll see the terms, the standards that are going to be addressed in that term. And then if you go down a little bit further, you'll see the IM puts out a scope and sequence with optional lessons. So it's very succinct right down to the dates and which lessons that are optional if you feel your kids are doing fine. If you want to add them in, you could. Then we have our universal assessments. You'll see that in blue. So those we have 3 times a year. And then, of course, we have our MCAS towards the end of the year. So then you'll see in bright pink at the bottom is a place where we can put in the standards check. And we can also put it in, we're able to fit 1 in per unit, basically. So we're looking at a few per term, and teachers can choose whether or not they want to use this as their final, like another assessment as part of the final piece of that standards-based topic, or use it as something midway to check their understanding and go through from there. So this is kind of a rough draft of the way a grade 6 would look over the course of the year. And the nice part is that you can say, okay, so it's March now. We should be here as a team. We should be here together, so that we're working horizontally aligned. And you'll be able to see kind of the days that we have a little wiggle room towards the end of the year, which, things come up. So, but this is a nice bird's eye view of what a grade 6 would look like.
It's a bird's eye view of what it would look like, but it's also the marriage of our standards flow currently, illustratives math units, and our mastery checks. So it's how they all fit together.
And the next 2 slides are grade 7, and then grade 8, same thing.
We correlate our standards-based grades, or I should say our standards, directly to illustrative math on purpose. Was that?
It actually turned out that it was working that way as we were doing it. Yes. So when putting this together, looked at the standards-based grading topics. We had already talked about this in the fall, and it just kind of lined beautifully, actually, with the IM scope and sequence. So it was beautiful.
I got a lot right in standards-based
It was really nice.
We just don't want to do it anymore. I don't think we got it right with kids and parents. Anyway, sorry, too off the cuff. But all right, so that's part 1 of the proposal. Basically, part 1 was we want to use iReady mastery checks to still objectively assess standards in short assessments along the way. Okay.
Sorry, it's me.
Go ahead, Sarah. Yeah,
I had 2 questions, sorry, just before we go to part 2. One is, and forgive me if I misheard this, when we're talking about choice for educators in terms of assessment, is that about the when of it, or is it also about percentage of the grade, or what it is, how it's going to be situated in a grade book? So if everyone's giving that assessment, is every educator then using it for 20% of a grade, or is there autonomy at the class level around that, because if you're using a uniform assessment, then educators have the discretion to count it 20% versus 50% versus.
So I think my response, Sarah, is that the educators would have autonomy at that grade level. So if you're on 7th grade, Jade and Sapphire would agree to include that in their grade book the same way.
Same way. Okay.
The tough part with this is much like whenever you do some sort of assessment mid-year that comes in is, as a teacher, you can be like, you know what, question 5, like I hadn't prepared them for that. So that's kind of where those like hard line, how it impacts the grades gets tough. But yeah, they would have to agree on grade.
Okay. I just know that has been.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I'll say that's just been a conversation that I feel like we've heard across schools, even Gordon, when we've been working with the collaborative committee, like what grading looks like and how grades can vary. So just trying to make sure that voice also comes forward from the collaborative committee. It's been a conversation as of late that's been pertinent to them.
Yeah, 100%. So we're lucky that in all 3 of our grade levels, our we call them counterparts. They do work well together, so
Okay.
they'll work well on that. And then, but what I don't think we want to go back to is not counting these as a grade.
Sure.
It should be something, whether it's 2% or 15%, we'll figure out. But they got to be a grade so kids dive in.
And that is different. I'm just trying to understand too, because at the beginning, I think you mentioned that in ELA, students receive a grade for their participation in completing iReady lessons. Whereas these wouldn't be lessons, these would be assessments. So would they have the opportunity to also earn credit in the same ways they are earning it in ELA, where it's you participated kind of like you did the 30 minutes that was required of you? So that would be 2 things happening, not one in replacement of the other.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the My Path work will still be that's the most important work, frankly. So yeah, 100%. The part 1 is just to say this is how we're going to keep an objective, calendar-based standards focus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then my last question, sorry, I lied, it was 3. So when in isolating the skills, as you're calling them, I think I counted 11 in 6th grade. How do those get isolated from the roughly 30 standards that are expected to be taught in 6th grade math?
So they're just the same as you would do priority standards, right? So they're not it's the old like pick the sun and it brings its planets with it. So when we first started this work in 2019, we did what we did even 8 or 9 years ago, which is you have 50 standards. Now you got to pick the priority ones. And that's how we landed at the skills. Now we then look at MCAS every year, look at changes every year. And some of these skills change year to year. But that's how it should be, frankly, that yearly reflection. But that's how it started. Pick the priority skills, the ones that matter the most, and that will most likely bring the other skills with them.
And is that happening with the units from IM as well? Or are you teaching the units from IM in their entirety, but then prioritizing some standards to go further with in terms of determining more of the standards-based grade?
Paul, you want to take that?
Accurate, Jill. When we started this whole process, we took a look at all the standards per grade. And then we figured out, well, these 3 standards fit under a larger umbrella. We're going to teach the kids and assess them on all these different skills, or all these different standards, but then we're going to report it out as one skill because we were trying to create a system that wasn't overwhelming for parents and kids. If they walked into my room and I said, well, we're going to learn 38 things this year starting today, that's a lot. And also it wouldn't be possible to assess individually every one of those standards 3 times to give them a full standards-based grade. Because that's our goal, is 3 different assessments to figure out, are you at the 1, 2, or the 3? So we would still, I think, be using those larger umbrella skills that would incorporate multiple standards within them.
And then in terms of how we do IM, we're in year 1. So right now, it's a little different in every room, I'm not going to lie, but some people have dove fully in. Some people are like figuring out how do they integrate the things they've been doing that work with the new resource they have available. So we're going in order in IM for sure. But as far as how concrete that is, it's year one. We're not there yet with that. We're not there yet in a uniform way.
No, that makes sense. I don't think I asked my question the right way. I meant more like when you're teaching the unit area and surface area, unit 1, for instance, is the intent to teach that unit in its entirety or only to teach the aspects of that unit that reflect the skills?
No, the whole unit.
Okay,
And
that's what I was trying to understand. Like, are you still teaching the units in entirety, or are you isolating sections of that unit that match the skills that have been isolated?
We're still teaching entire units based on the standards.
Okay.
We're reporting out categories with expressions and equations. It incorporates lots of individual standards, but when it goes into the grade book currently, it's reported as skill number 7 that you can go ahead and work with expressions and equations to simplify, or actually you can simplify expressions. So it's lots of individual skills that are reported in one category. Again, so we can take a look at how are you with this whole group of standards as opposed to reporting each and every. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So part 1 was that schedule of formative assessments using iReady. Part 2 of our proposal is we blend standards-based grading and traditional grades by doing the following. We use the new Power School gradebook to put all scores in by standard or skill. So what I mean by that, as a parent, I log into my kids. It says quiz number 1, and then they have a 84. Okay, great. Congratulations on your 84 on quiz number 1. Right? We don't want to do that. We don't want to go back to that traditional of grading. We just want to go back to the percentages. So what we want to put is instead of quiz number 1, we want to say equations and expressions, check number 1, right? 72. That way we can say, hey, what's going on, daughter, with your understanding of equations and expressions, right? So we're trying to keep the standard/skill in the conscious and in the narrative, but then attach it to a percentage that everybody understands and that motivates. Okay, so I basically just said it, so now the bullets just say it again. I practiced this a lot more to present it to my math department.
It did go well, though.
Yeah, so I was way more nervous. You guys make me way less nervous. So our to this bullet here, so our grade book would look standards-based. If we get this right, it'll look fairly standards-based, but with percentages, clearly talking to everybody the way everybody else's grade book talks to them. Okay? And then we would also include, and this goes to Sarah's question, we would also include grades for iReady, for homework, for class participation, right? So those go back in the grade book, all right? And these non-standards grades, of course, can count for no more than 20% of the final grade. So, but in our math department, we'd be excited to have them back in there. And like week 17, iReady, you got 100, great job. You did your 30 minutes and you passed a lesson, right? Week 18 and iReady, you got a 50. You did your 30 minutes and you passed a lesson. What's going on? And we think that 50 is going to resonate with parents as well.
A quick question.
Yes.
So like, say for instance, beginning, they're progressing and they're mastering. Okay, so if you said like a 72, would that equate, I know it isn't going to equate to like the letter of the same because you have other things, but in the past would that 72 have been like, okay, they're progressing, they haven't met it yet? Would it be like they have a grade that's specific to them, or would each mastery skill be set with a grade? Like they've mastered it, they're up in the 90s. If they're progressing, they're in the 80s. Like, do you know, how's that going to work?
So one thing that standards-based grading is meant to do is, two things it's meant to do. One is standards-based grading is a tool for equity, often seen that way, because you take out, did you do the homework, right? I might not have time to do the homework. I might have a lot going on at home, but I can master the skill, right? Another thing that standards-based grading is meant to do is really get all teachers on the same page with what getting a 3.0 on this assessment truly looks like. So if they were both 7th grade teachers, before they give the assessment, they hash out What's a 3.0? What's a 2.0? What's a 4.0? Which really is the hardest question. We always add a question that's above grade level. Beth, what you're pointing out is a little bit of the problem with going back to percentages. I'm not going to lie, which is like, although at Birchland teachers work really close together because they have time built in to do so, a quiz could be 8 questions in her room and 11 questions in his room. And it might look, so I don't think it's the same as saying if you're in the 70s, you are progressing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're giving that up a little bit. However, the reason we're giving it up is because for each kid, the percentage that they should be at is a little different, right? So some kids strive for that B and we see that 84 and we're like, nice job, right? And other kids are like, don't even talk to me if I'm under a 95, right? So like you open those doors, you close that one a little bit, you open those ones at the same time.
All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So how do teachers handle if some of their students are like a 4 at a standard and then there's other kids that are at like a 1 or a 2 in the same class?
Same as we always do, Antonella. It's the age-old question of what do I do with a spectrum of kids at different levels, and that's up for us to meet them at whatever level they're currently performing and try to move them further along. And we do have those kids mixed up in our classes where we do have some who are at the 4 level, and it's nice to take and challenge them to get them to move as far as we can get them. All those kids who struggle to get to 2s, it's nice for them to see the success of moving on as well. But again, the problem we run into is while some kids internalize the difference between a 2 and a 3, like 2 is not good enough, I need to get that 3. A lot just say, well, I didn't get the 3, but I got a 2, it's just pretty close. And they lose the idea that, well, a 2 means you understand the concept, just not at the level of rigor that Massachusetts framework says you need to be able to know and be able to do this particular skill. So again, it comes down to us working with our kids and knowing our kids and trying to push our kids as much as we can, no matter where they are.
And there are more, that's the age-old question, like you said, but there are more tools. Kudos to everybody at this table, but like we have more tools than that forever. Illustrative math, the better we get, it's an online program. It's going to have different ways for people to do some harder problems while others aren't. iReady does in some ways the same thing. Like kids can go farther than the kid next to them because it's an individualized program. So teachers still have to navigate that themselves, but there are tools now which exist, which help. And the last bullet at the end here was just, we do spit out a traditional letter grade at the end of the term. So even though we try to create this thing that like parents can look at it and be informed as to what skills their kids are doing well at and at what skills they need to do better at, we're still going to spit out a traditional letter grade.
And that'll go on the.
We are back on the first page, baby.
You still give the second page?
No second page. No second page.
Oh,
really?
Request for 1 page.
Yeah.
Yes, we still end
Because that second page exists the whole time. That's the grade book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's the grade book.
Parents will have access to that.
Yeah.
They'll be able to.
But on report card day, sorry, but you get that one letter.
Okay.
So pre-K through 5 do standards-based, right? And I guess I'm surprised that, because I know I got my first standards-based report card when Julia was in 5th grade. And I looked at it and went like, I'm like, oh, you did great. And I'm looking at it like, this is like toilet paper. I'm going to be honest with you. And it wasn't until, I guess I was just assuming that they've gotten them for so long now that they would, because it wasn't until I actually graded kids like this that I went, oh, like the bell goes off. I'm surprised you're not finding that they're just understanding, the parents are understanding the standards-based grading they've had it now for 5-6 years. I'm happy you're doing this. And I think if it improves a kid to want to get to the 82 or the 85 or the 90, fantastic. But you didn't find that parents are understanding it now that they've been getting these report cards for 5 or 6 years?
No.
Oh.
Unfortunately, well, one of the struggles that
Which
parents.
is fine.
One of the struggles that parents have had is when they get into plus portals, they can see a snapshot of all the grades. Mm-hmm. So you see an average for every class except math.
Okay.
So it's a big blank spot on there.
All right.
And a lot aren't really adept at drilling down into the grade book to find out those 1s, the 2s, and the 3s. So instead, they're kind of left with, all right, you're doing great and everything. How's math? Good? All right. Which unfortunately, then they're less connected instead of more connected.
Right, okay.
And I would say there may be less pushback from parents because they've come up in a standards-based way. We did ours very differently from the elementary. Yeah,
that's
elementary
true.
does the 4 big strands, if I'm not mistaken, and you sort of get scored on them all year. We did like, here's actually the 11 skills or 8 skills or whatever. And we wanted to be different on purpose. We didn't want it to be progressing, emerging, because I think for the parents that have 5 minutes a week to check like that, I didn't know how that would work for like 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds. So we tried to be more specific with 3.0, 4.0. But no, it's just not resonating.
All right, well, I'm happy you guys did what you did.
So in sum,
We tried.
our feeling is our move to standards-based grading did accomplish the objective of making us more focused on standards mastery. And I think there's a correlation to that MCAS math improvement. So it did that. However, the way we are reporting has not accomplished our objective in that parents and students don't fully understand the non-percentages, and students we're finding are actually showing less motivation for the nitty-gritty work. This new system, including both standards mastery checks and the percentages tied to standards, would be the best of both worlds as we move forward. Gordon, this is your slide.
So would the standards-based checks from iReady, I'm making an assumption those would be uniform across a grade level as well?
Yes. Yeah. With our counterparts, we pick there's a Form A and Form B. So we always review those. We figure out which one looks better. And usually there is. Usually there's a choice that just looks like it's a better assessment of the student's understanding. And then we decide together, and like in 7th grade, we give it on the same day as much as we can. So it's planning out together, given the same day. And when we were using it for standards-based, we would also talk about, well, what does constitute a 3? What constitutes, is there a possibility of a 4 on this? So there's a lot of conversation, discussion around those particular mastery checks.
And then because those, you can't edit those in the ways you can other assessments. So then you're kind of either pushed to give the assessment in its entirety and then determine like you're not counting one of them towards a grade. And then are you planning on combining any of those to actually get to the skills that you're identifying as being together versus just assessing one of them, which wouldn't touch all the skills I'm assuming are rolled up into like
they're at the standard level, Sarah. So it's when you pick one, it's not under a skill. You're picking a very specific standard.
Right.
You cannot edit. So there is a Form A and a Form B, but because they're making these things to assess the kid's understanding, you got to give it the way that it's written. And we sometimes do afterwards realize when we go back and look at question number 4, for example, we'll say, what happened with the kids? And we realized the drop downs were just very difficult to understand. So there are times that we have not included those on the standards-based assessment because it's not fair to the kids to say they didn't understand it based on something they didn't understand just how to do, as opposed to the content of the question. There have been other times where in order to create, for example, a level 4 assessment, we'll incorporate a really challenging question from a Form A. We'll attach a paper version of that to the Form B. The problem there is we lose the ability for iReady to go ahead and correct it. Yeah, and they come back with a series. They have a spectrum of the scores where you go from the red, which is kind of that we're really concerned range, to the yellow, which is all right, you are progressing, you're getting there, to the green, which shows that you've mastered this particular standard.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other thoughts or questions from the committee? No? If not, we would entertain a motion to approve the middle school math grading update or change.
Okay, I move to approve the middle school math grading update as presented.
Okay, motion made by Beth.
Second?
Second by Tanel. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. That carries 5-0. Thank you all for coming tonight and for your explanations. Good luck with the changes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for letting us go before McGee.
Yeah. He is long-winded after all. Good night. Take care. Yeah, good night.
Good night. Thank you.
All right, Kevin, you're up. We have a request for the eighth grade waiver for ELHS baseball.
Yes, so I did not anticipate asking for this waiver, otherwise I would have asked for it at the same time as softball. We anticipated 30 baseball participants. We ended up with only 22. And I do want to preface this with, in all the 6 years I've been the athletic director, we've never had more than 300 participants in the spring. And I think we're going to hit that number this spring. So it's not a matter of athletic participation being down. I think it's just the highs and lows of a different sports program. And right now the baseball program just doesn't have many participants, which is why they're at that 22 number. A good example is volleyball. 3 years ago, we had to ask for an eighth grade waiver. We only had 6 volleyball players 3 years ago, and this year 35 kids signed up to play volleyball. So it's a good example of why we asked for these waivers, because if we didn't ask for that waiver 3 years ago with volleyball, we would have considered dropping the program. And there's no desire to drop the baseball program, and I think this will probably be the only time in the next 10 years that we ask for a baseball eighth grade waiver, because the younger levels, there's a lot of participants there. So long story short, we're at 22 current 9 through 12th graders. We're anticipating approximately 8 eighth graders. This would allow us to field a varsity team and a JV team. The eighth graders would only be allowed to play on the JV team, which is an MIA rule. It would allow for enough pitching. There's pretty strict pitching rules with the number of pitches that kids can throw, so it gives us plenty of pitchers on that JV team. And that's kind of why we're looking for that eighth grade waiver.
Okay. Questions, comments? Motion.
Has this been, sorry, I know you talked about softball. There was mention that rec had coordinated their schedules, I believe, to allow for softball players to continue to play rec, whatever it might be, like U14, and also be able to play for the high school team. Will that same type of I guess, schedule be created to allow the rec to not necessarily have enough kids to play?
Yep, so I did talk to the rec department in advance of doing the waiver, and we're on the same page that it would not negatively impact the rec program. The high school games typically start at 4 p.m. There's lots of flexibility with scheduling. We're looking at having 13 or 14 JV games with 4 p.m. starts. So those players that are choosing to play on the high school team would still be able to participate on the rec team. They just have to follow the MIAA rule that the high school team has to come first. But I'm confident, just like in softball, that players would be able to participate on both teams without a conflict and without missing high school games.
And will those same pitching rules impact, and how will that, because that's different than softball, is there a log or something that have to be communicated between the two teams so that one doesn't cause a violation for the other, if that makes sense, Kevin? Sorry.
Yeah, the pitching rules do not transfer over to the rec department, but that'll be something that I communicate with the coaches and with the rec department, that it's going to be important for player safety that if a player is not eligible to pitch at the high school level, that they are not pitching at the rec level when they're not eligible at the high school level. So that's a really good point, that we will have those logs available to the rec coaches also. Both coaches need to sign off on that, the home team and the visiting team, after each game. And I'll add in that communication to the rec coach so they can see what players are available to pitch and what players are not.
Awesome. Thanks. I think some of the leagues had their own restrictions, and I don't know how far up in the grades or ages that goes, but I know, for instance, like when the kids were like 10, they can only pitch a certain number of innings in baseball, even for a particular league, let alone like balancing the two. That would just be a question.
That's a good point.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to approve the waiver.
I move to approve the 8th grade MIAA waiver for baseball to include 8th graders.
Okay, motion made by Beth.
Second.
By Janella. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Kevin.
you.
Take care. Okay, moving right along, we have old business. A couple of us wanted some more time on the superintendent's formative mid-cycle.
You have a
Oh,
gift for-
Thank you,
yep.
sorry.
You missed some.
My bad.
We didn't have anything to put into the packet, so that's why you don't have a packet item, sorry.
Do you,
Don't want me to speak to it?
describe it? Sure. Thank you.
So earlier, when we were recognizing our Pioneer Valley Excellence in Teaching Award winners, one of our award winners was Ms. Jan Cleany. She also, as you remember, was nominated by the math department and Ms. Ruger from the social studies department to the Western Mass News Surprise Squad. And she was selected, which was awesome. So with that, when they select you and they come and they surprise you and do the celebration and the ceremony, they bring monetary gifts. So Ms. Clooney got a gift card and the high school got a gift card, each of $500 in value. And so we wanted to bring that gift card that the high school received to all of you so that we can put it in the gift account.
Great. Awesome. Very cool.
They didn't give us any documentation though.
Okay.
The gift card.
Oh, we got the card.
There's
Okay.
a video.
That's all I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on TV.
There's a video. I have the gift card and the video.
Okay, motion to approve, please.
All right, I move to accept
Accept, thank you.
the gift of $500 to ELHS from the Western Mass News Surprise Squad.
Motion made by Antonella. Second by Amy. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Thank you. That carries 5-0. We're going to table
Thank
the
you.
superintendent's formative mid-cycle assessment. We'll bring that back in 2 weeks. If folks want to take another look at that, that would be great. And we have a discussion on school choice for 2023-2024 school year.
Okay, so in your packets, you have a breakdown of the current class size, or maybe a better way to say it so it's not confusing to anybody watching at home, the current enrollment at each grade level. So, for instance, you have KF, that means kindergarten full-time. We have 157 students. First grade, we have 179. So this is this year. Remember, we're projecting for open slots for school choice next year if the committee continues to participate in the program. So in the last few years, we have discussed, both as a leadership team, but also at the school committee level, the idea of having choice slots open earlier in earlier grade levels so our students who come in under the choice program acclimate and go through as many grade levels as possible in the East Long Meadow Public Schools. We've also looked at, and we want to be strategic in where are we doing this so that we have fewer students maybe enrolled at a certain grade level, so we're not exhausting existing resources as we bring students in. And so those have been the discussions over the last few years. The elementary principals have been open to looking at and have recommended, especially at the third grade level, bringing in students at that level when students transition from Meadowbrook to Maple Shade and Mountain View. And if you look currently, other than kindergarten, our next lowest grade level for enrollment is at the second grade level, which would then open up the possibility to bring in school choice students as students transition from this year's second grade into third grade. And the other thing that we need to keep in mind is as they go from 8 sections at Meadowbrook, there are 5 sections at each grade level for both Maple Shade and Mountain View. So you're looking at taking that 162 across roughly 10 sections. Doesn't always work out exactly even in the balancing. That's where sometimes the swing line comes into play, but we do our best to try to keep as balanced a enrollment at each of the schools as possible. The recommendation from the administration, certainly open up to discussion, would be you could easily accept 8 school choice students at the 3rd grade level next year. And depending on how things play out with enrollment and special education assignments and so forth, you could go 4 and 4. But we certainly would look at that as we continue to make our assignments for next school year.
So I had approached you earlier in the year, kind of sort of wanting, because you all know how I feel about this. I feel that I don't think it's necessarily what's best for multiple reasons. One being it becomes part of our budget, and you know how I feel about just picking and choosing where we can put kids to I won't go there. But anyways, I had kind of hoped, because I had come very early in the year, that yes, to keep it from 3rd grade and under, and I appreciate that thought this year, but I would like moving forward, because I am off the board after this year, and I would like to see moving forward that we keep it for my own thought process, because I don't love it. At those younger grades, I think it's really important for cohesiveness for students and for becoming friends and for moving on smoothly when you hit those awkward middle school years and that kind of stuff. I don't think we can do anything that's necessarily like a document, and I understand that, but I would like for it just to become maybe something that we do as a habit, as opposed to just picking, oh, gee, we could put one kid in 9th grade in this. I just am not a fan of that. But I'm hoping that moving forward that if by some miracle this school passes, that we are mindful of the fact that some older people may be moving out, more younger people are going to be wanting to move in, and that we have to think about that moving forward to not get to those upper levels where we end up with 3 or 4 or 5 more kids in each grade, that now we've got an overflow moving forward. I mean, these are things that I think will impact the students that live in this town too. I understand that it's giving a leg up for some kids. I also understand that we have our own that we need to be respectful of. So,
and those are all excellent points, which is why, as we've had these discussions, we certainly have always stayed away from kindergarten, because that's the hardest one to predict.
Right.
We are currently at more of our average, which is, somewhere, actually it's a little bit lower than average. We're generally in the 160s, we're at 157. But if you look, you just scan up, you see that, last year they had 179. And 2 years ago, they had 186. So that's where I think some of the anxiety comes from when I discuss this with Meadowbrook, in terms of they get nervous about that, although I think they would be open to looking at 2nd grade. We just, for this coming year, we know that we have 179 students moving into that 2nd grade.
Right.
And so it wasn't the year to make that recommendation.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
And I also think, Beth, respectfully, I don't particularly agree with you on this. I think that's putting up a barrier by trying to say we should only accept them up until 3rd grade or whatever. That's putting up a little barrier. We're trying to move forward and with this lens of, through diversity, equity, inclusion. We don't want to say to our neighboring towns, I'm sorry, you can't join our school community here because you didn't do it early enough or what have you.
True, but I don't find that I think that we think it brings in diversity. I think we think it does. It doesn't necessarily.
I'm not saying that it does or doesn't. I'm just saying generally.
It's more of I'm hoping, and this is the other thing too, that I hope it's in a hat and you pick them out, unless.
It has to be lottery.
Yeah, and I know that but that doesn't necessarily mean, I don't think we've ever gotten to the point where we've had to do that.
What's that?
Have we had to use picking them out of a hat, pick and choose kind of thing?
So you do it every year.
Yeah.
How many we get, we still do lottery because we're directed as part of the regulation to make sure it's a lottery pull. And we do have a wait list. I think we have a current wait list at 6th grade.
Six people on the wait list.
Yeah.
And I
do
understand that's a
respect where you're coming
balance,
from.
but I'm just saying, just because it's hard work, just because it's difficult, we would have to help people acclimate. We would have to perhaps, I don't know what that looks like, but just because it's difficult and hard doesn't mean we don't do it.
No, I understand that, but I'm talking about in fairness of, you're going to bring in, say 8 children into the 3rd grade next year. These children are going to come from multiple different areas. Now, and you could sit there and think we're going to do it toot sweet, but we're not. It's going to take a year or two to say, okay, maybe they need something, maybe they don't. We've got to catch up. We've got to learn who these kids are. Now, maybe it's an added burden on speech therapists or OT or, Title I reading or whatever it is. Now you're trying to, so like, it's, you have to be extremely mindful of that. And the thought process is, of course, we're going to meet all of these kids' needs, but sometimes it's not that easy to get that extra reading teacher in or that extra person in. And that's where I get very concerned on behalf of the people who do pay taxes in town. And then there's also people who are renting in town, who ultimately that rent pays the taxes. And these are the people that should be our first and primary concern moving forward. If we have space, obviously it looks like 2nd grade going into 3rd, there is space. I don't like it when we sit there and in the past, we could put one here and we could put one there. I feel like it's just unseemly to me. And I just, it's just the thing, not on behalf of the town, on behalf of these kids that are walking into this community and having to deal with. It's one thing if you move in, it's another thing if you're that kid, and you hate, for them to look at them like nobody should know where anybody's from originally, but it happens. And you don't want those kids to get that feeling of like not belonging. It takes time.
But that's on us as a
It is
school
on us,
community.
but
That's on us.
I understand that, but it doesn't happen. I just am more concerned about a child coming in than I am about the kids already in the district. I just want to be respectful of those kids. I have seen in my tenure doing what I do, some extremely difficult situations, and it wasn't the fault of the school or the kid or the other kids. It was just a roundabout of how things, and you think this move's going to be, and it's not in this district or even in the one I work in, such a great situation, and those kids are destroyed and they end up going back. And I guess I feel
generalizing a little bit though.
I'm not generalizing. These are things I've seen happen.
I'm not saying they haven't happened. I'm just saying we're not. Aren't we trying to move?
I guess I feel if we bring them in younger, then we can embrace them as ours better.
And forgive me if I'm mistaken, but I don't recall a time when we've made the decision to move forward with school choice in the past that we've only opened one spot. And we really, in addition to attendance, we also tried to look at those kind of transitional years. Right. I'm sorry, not attendance, enrollment. So it wasn't just the lowest of enrollment locations that we were seeing. It was also trying to couple it with, well, everyone's transitioning into 6th grade right now. So wouldn't that be ideal? Or everyone's transitioning into 9th grade right now. I'm just trying to go back through and remind myself, Beth, it's not a criticism. It's more I think these are some of the things we have tried to incorporate in previous discussions. Beyond enrollment, it was also critical transition years, and then making sure we weren't just offering up one spot, but ensuring that, I think that the smallest we ever did was 5, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't know if anyone else recalls the previous votes.
I do. I agree with you. That is how we've done it. I still feel a little bit like it's picking and choosing. I'm not going to change anybody's mind here tonight. I know I'm not going to change anybody's mind here tonight. I'm still not necessarily going to vote for it because I don't think that it's what's right. I think I understand why you're coming from and how you're saying it. I also feel that I look at the cacophony of what's coming in now too, and I worry about how the town is going to look at the budget. There's so many little things. What I do like this better than not. Mm-hmm. I think better than the higher grades. I think at that point, we have had I know we've had situations where we're like, afterwards, it takes a little bit of time for some of these kids to acclimate. So I just want you guys to be mindful moving through that those are, yes, it gives a kid a leg up. I understand that. That's why, we should be doing it. But I also know that there are school districts where this becomes a big part of their budget. And then it's not about the kids anymore. It's about the budget. And I don't ever want us to get there because then that's not what it's
But
supposed to
don't
be.
forget, we send students out as well, so not, it's a give and take. It's not
I
just-
understand that. I understand that. And if somebody who lives in this
balance that
town
out.
wants to send their kid out,
Yeah.
that's their situation. But they can come back, and we need to make, keep that in mind too.
And I think you make a
So-
good point about the high school coming soon and the potential for more.
We just got to think about that,
That's a-
and I don't
So
want
if we
to.
focus on the third grade, I think as Mr. Smith has proposed,
I mean, if
I
you
think we're
start
all on the
with-
same page, at least for this year.
Yeah, I mean, if you start with the second grade into third grade, you start with that little group, eventually you're gonna have, okay, every, second into third grade, it's gonna be 5 kids and 5 kids and 5 kids. You put that across all the years, you will find that it'll be a consistent level of kids, give or take a few here and there, as opposed to and then it's consistent, then that's I just want it to be clean and neat and respectful moving forward.
Well, I think we've always done that, though. I mean, last year, I remember when we were voting, I think we were only putting students where we could fit them. And I mean, if all of our numbers were at 200 right now, yeah, I don't think we would be able to put any more kids in any of the grades. So I wouldn't say, yes, let's put some more in so we can get some money.
I mean, this year,
But-
that's how it works out. But,
And I think
I'm
we
not,
need
like
to
I said,
look at
it's
it
fine. It's
year
just
to
how
year.
I want you guys to think about it.
And you may have an
Like to keep
opportunity
them under third grade.
next year, because you're looking at 157 students moving up.
Yeah, but those parents that haven't even thought to sign the kids up. They're out there.
And I think in general, we
Fair
need to be
point.
very cautious. And even if the administrators at Meadowbrook are potentially game for that next year, I think we've heard a lot of concerns over space, classrooms being repurposed for the needs of preschool, teachers not having their own classrooms, like all of those other factors. I think we also have to be careful of, because we would not want to displace educators any further or ask them to do anything in addition to what they're already doing to accommodate an expanding preschool model, because we want to bring on school choice at a younger grade, as opposed to embracing school choice based on our enrollment, but also, like we've talked about, those gateway years, and in addition, the capacity of our buildings, because that's a huge factor. And also, we have not become, and I'm just making sure, because I know sometimes people watch these, I just want to make sure I'm being clear too, we have not become dependent on this as a function of our budget, and nor does it seem like that's a direction that we're headed, regardless of what's going on with the high school, or regardless of any type of percentages that we are asking for in terms of increases in our budget. Like we have not, I don't even know that we've actually touched this line item in our budget as of yet.
We have not, and to Mr. Thompson's point, we actually, this year, still are sending more students out via school choice to other districts for whatever reason than we are receiving. Though, depending on, what the vote is in the next few minutes, we may start to balance that out.
So the question really should be, why are they going out? And we've never sat down as a committee and said, okay, we've interviewed some parents and keep it as confidential as possible. And what is your concerns? What are we doing wrong? What is it you want to see?
It's
I
not-
thought we did create an exit survey for families who leave the district, if I'm not.
Yeah, but it's nothing I've ever seen in 12 years.
We don't have an exit survey for choice, but in looking at where students have choiced out to, in many cases, you have situations where you have parents who work in that district. Some have choiced out to performing arts, which is not something that we offer as others. We have, though that's a charter school, so I could be wrong on that. So I'll say performing arts and where parents. But then there's a chunk, you're right, that we don't know exactly why they've choiced out.
And I think that's even anyways, it is what it is. We leave it at that.
Did you have something, Pam?
I was just going to add, to let the school committee know that Samantha on a daily basis is getting phone calls into our office about school choice. So there is a lot of interest, and this has been happening for over a month. So I just thought you should know that calls come in every single day.
The other thing, and as much as I dislike it, if we have a student in here that we have taken in school choice, you know, I think it's, you could get the sibling in, I think that's important.
Legally, you have to. If you have a spot open,
If you have it open,
so the sibling has first rights at the open spot
right,
if it matches.
matches.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
John, thoughts?
I don't want to jump in there, yeah.
look, I think you really have to think about this, because if by the grace of whatever, that school passes, there will be people who've waited to sell their homes feeling they'll get a better price once the school goes in, because they know that they're going to. You could find yourself in a situation where, you know, so just think about it. Because I know that nobody can afford a house right now or the interest rate on it, but you know,
Right.
okay.
Good. Okay. Everybody's cool?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll take a motion then, please.
Is it 8 spots?
That's what we're.
That's what we talked about. That was our recommendation, that the
All right.
motion
So there'd
can
be
be.
10, there's 10 classes total, so
Right.
it'd be almost 1 per class on average,
Right.
speaking average.
All right, so I moved to, hold on a minute.
And just a quick question, sorry,
Yeah.
so this is all at the second, this would all be proposed for this,
Yeah, and then that 162 number moving to 3rd grade, yeah.
So be in third grade.
and no other open spots?
Did you want to talk about any other spots?
Well, I don't know, I
Okay.
mean,
The only other one that's low relatively would be 4th and the 5th. It's not quite as low, and it's not a transition year.
right,
I think as we go above, then you get close to 200,
right.
which,
Yeah, no, I think probably makes sense. I don't necessarily want us to be closed off in the future to opening spots at different grade levels.
I won't be here, and you guys can do whatever you want. Open it up to everybody. I'm done. No,
Yeah,
it's time.
We've heard that before.
Well, fortunately, somebody wants my spot, so that's a good thing. No.
All right, I'd like to move to, wait, hold on a minute. I just want to make sure I'm saying this right. I'd like to move to accept the school choice for 2023-2024 school year to add 8 spots to the current 2nd grade,
No, add to the grade 3 level.
add to the grade 3 level
for the 2023-24 school year.
for the 2023-2024 school year.
Sam, good with that?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Motion made by Antonella,
Second?
second by Amy. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
That motion carries 4-1. Good discussion. Thank you all for that. With that, we've arrived at the end of our meeting. If no one else has anything else to contribute, then thank you, John, for being here today.
Thanks, John.
Mr. Mackey, thank you for your time and efforts. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Still move.
Motion made by Antonella. Second by Beth. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 5-0. Thank you. We are adjourned.